kinh tế lớn có quy mô trên toàn châu Á. Đặc biệt tại Việt Nam, hàng ngàn công ty tập đoàn với quy mô lớn nhỏ được mở cửa, tạo ra hàng triệu việc làm cho người lao động. Tuy nhiên, đi đôi với sự phát triển mạnh mẽ, sự khốc liệt của thị trường đang đặt ra cho các doanh nghiệp sự thách thức to lớn xoay quanh nhiều vấn đề như quản trị hệ thống, quản trị nhân sự, quản lý dòng tiền để đảm bảo doanh nghiệp của mình phát triển lâu dài và bền vững. Vấn đề được đặt ra là làm thế nào để doanh nghiệp có thể tồn tại trong bối cảnh nền kinh tế phát triển chóng mặt, luôn giữ thế chủ động trước đối thủ cạnh tranh, không bị ảnh hưởng bởi lạm phát của đồng tiền hay tìm thấy nguồn khách hàng tiềm năng ổn định mỗi ngày đang và sẽ luôn là những vấn đề sâu còn của từng doanh nghiệp. Trong quá trình điều hành doanh nghiệp, chắc hẳn đã có một lần các chủ doanh nghiệp đã phải tự chất vấn bản thân rằng doanh nghiệp của mình có tự vận hành và đạt hiệu quả cao khi bản thân không có mặt ở đó hay không. Bản thân có đang xây dựng, điều hành và phát triển doanh nghiệp đúng cách hay chưa? Nếu câu trả lời của bạn là không hoặc tôi không biết, bạn có lường trước doanh nghiệp của mình đang và sẽ phải đối diện với những vấn đề nghiêm trọng gì hay không? Nếu đây là lần đầu tiên bạn nghe đến cụm từ tổ chức liên minh chiến lược, thì hãy hiểu rằng đó là hệ thống vững chắc cho sự phát triển thịnh vượng vì doanh nghiệp và cho doanh nghiệp của bạn, là nơi đem đến cho bạn mô hình những quyền thương hiệu chuẩn quốc tế, giúp bạn đạt hiệu quả kinh doanh tốt nhất, nơi đem đến cho bạn nguồn khách hàng chất lượng đúng với chiến lược mục tiêu, nơi đem đến những cơ hội kết nối với những nhà quản lý có tầm nhìn với bạn để có thể chia sẻ nhiều ý tưởng kinh doanh độc đáo, và hơn hết là nơi tăng cường năng lực cho cộng đồng doanh nhân Đông Nam Á. Tất cả những điều đó chính là sứ mệnh và giá trị cốt lõi mà BCA mang đến cho cộng đồng doanh nhân Việt Nam nói riêng và cộng đồng doanh nhân Đông Nam Á nói chung.
Vâng, kính thưa quý vị, tôi là Hồ Quang Minh, sáng lập và tổng giám đốc của BCA. Rất vui mừng trong 18 tháng qua, BCA đồng hành với thương hiệu Action Code tại hơn 10 nước ở Đông Nam Á đã giúp cho hơn 100 nhà huấn luyện đồng hành hàng tuần với 500 chủ doanh nghiệp, gia tăng cái lợi nhuận doanh số và cũng như một cái hệ thống quản trị doanh nghiệp bền vững hơn. Chúng tôi làm được điều đó bởi vì chúng tôi thấy được những người chủ doanh nghiệp họ tiết kiệm được thời gian hơn, thứ hai họ có nhiều thời gian hơn cho gia đình, và thứ ba nữa là họ thấy được việc họ làm ý nghĩa qua cái đam mê và sản phẩm dịch vụ họ cung cấp, và tương lai họ có được một cái doanh nghiệp bền vững. Với một cái niềm vui đó, chúng tôi không ngừng chia sẻ với quý vị là tầm nhìn của BCA là tạo sức mạnh cho doanh nhân Đông Nam Á.
Xin chào tất cả quý vị đến với chương trình đỉnh cao số lượng khách hàng. Chúng ta hãy dành cho nhau một tràng tay thật lớn ạ. Vâng, thưa quý vị, cho tối nay được hỏi, trong hội trường ngày hôm nay có bao nhiêu anh chị đã từng bị khách hàng từ chối? Giơ tay trái lên và nói tôi. Vâng, bao nhiêu anh chị mong muốn rằng sau chương trình buổi chiều ngày hôm nay, chúng ta chỉ cần mất 10 giây thôi, chúng ta có thể hiểu khách hàng, hành vi tính cách của họ là gì, và có thể giúp cho giao dịch anh chị thành công hơn. Giơ tay phải lên và nói tôi. Vâng, hãy vỗ vỗ vai người bên cạnh và nói là gì, bạn đã đến đúng nơi rồi ạ. Dạ vâng, xin cảm ơn quý vị. Thưa quý vị, chương trình ngày hôm nay của chúng ta sẽ cùng đồng hành suốt một buổi chiều ngày nay với tiến sĩ Tony Alexandra. Nhưng trước khi bắt đầu, tôi xin được phép giới thiệu những thành phần trong VIP của chúng ta ngày hôm nay. Trước tiên tôi là Tuấn Anh. Hiện nay Tuấn Anh đang là một nhà huấn luyện thuộc Action Code Hà Nội West. Ngày hôm nay tôi xin được phép giới thiệu những nhân vật cực kỳ quan trọng sẽ chia sẻ trong chương trình ngày hôm nay của chúng ta. Trước tiên là tiến sĩ Tony Alexandra, là nhà sáng lập, là người thuộc tổ chức Ascendment Online 24/7. Hãy dành một tràng tay thật lớn cho Tony Alexandra, diễn giả chính của chúng ta trong ngày hôm nay. Dạ vâng, cảm ơn. Thứ hai là ngài Michael Hồ Quang Minh, là sáng lập viên, là CEO của Business Coaching Asia, người đã mang Ascendment Online về đến Việt Nam của chúng ta. Thứ ba là bà Hà Thị Phương Thanh, Phó Chủ tịch Hội đồng Nữ Doanh nhân Việt Nam, Chủ tịch Hiệp hội Nữ Doanh nhân Hà Nội, đồng thời là Chủ tịch Hiệp hội Thương nhân Deloitte Việt Nam. Cùng đồng hành ngày hôm nay có ông Lương Hoàng Hưng, Phó Chủ tịch Hiệp hội Khoa học Doanh nhân Việt Nam. Vâng, một tràng vỗ tay thật lớn dành cho quý vị đại biểu. Và đặc biệt trong chương trình ngày hôm nay, chúng ta cũng có sự có mặt của hơn 250 chủ doanh nghiệp. Chính là các anh chị hãy dành một tràng vỗ tay thật lớn cho tất cả chúng ta. Vâng, xin cảm ơn quý vị. Trước khi chương trình của chúng ta bắt đầu, chúng ta sẽ bao nhiêu anh chị mong muốn chương trình về DSC của chúng ta sẽ bắt đầu ngay bây giờ? Dạ vâng, xin cảm ơn anh chị. Tuy nhiên, trước khi chương trình của chúng ta chính thức bắt đầu, tôi xin được chia sẻ đầu tiên, đơn vị đầu tiên người đã mang về DSC cho chúng ta ngày hôm nay đến Việt Nam. Chúng ta có cơ hội ngày hôm nay xin được trân trọng kính mời ông Michael Hồ Quang Minh, Chủ tịch của Business Coaching Asia sẽ bước lên sân khấu với lời chào mừng gửi đến quý vị và xin trân trọng kính mời ông.
Vâng, cảm ơn quý vị đã hiện diện chiều ngày hôm nay. Quý anh chị biết không, khi làm việc như vậy, về nhiều người nhức đầu về doanh số, nhiều người nhức đầu về tài chính, nhiều người nhức đầu về công nghệ, nhưng mọi người hãy lo nhiều việc khác. Ví dụ như doanh số của mình xuống, mọi người cứ nói là do mấy anh không có bán hàng, do cái hệ thống chính sách thượng thiết, nhưng ít ai hiểu được cái tài sản quý giá của mình là những con người. Nhiều khi chúng ta, những người chủ hay là những người anh em với nhau đang chưa hiểu được với nhau theo cái hành vi mình sinh ra, cái tố chất mình sinh ra, nên những điều đó làm cho chúng ta trong quá trình giao tiếp, trong gia đình cũng như trong kinh doanh làm cho chúng ta chưa thành công hơn người khác. Tôi trải nghiệm được việc đó và tôi thấy được rõ ràng BNI đưa về lợi cho các doanh nghiệp. Đến nay hơn 7 năm BNI có hơn 2.700 chủ doanh nghiệp, hơn hiện diện trên 12 tỉnh thành. Action Coach đưa về trong 15 tháng qua đã mang lại hiệu quả rất lớn. Và đến giờ này chúng tôi đi sâu vào trong những việc đó thì DISC là một sự cộng hưởng cho tổ chức BNI trên toàn thế giới trong việc networking, và DISC mang lại cái lợi ích rất nhiều cho người nhà huấn luyện với khách hàng, cũng như những người đi giao tiếp, cũng như là những việc những anh chị doanh nghiệp nhân sự ở bên trong các tổ chức, cũng như những người đặc biệt để bán hàng và năng lực leadership lãnh đạo của các chủ doanh nghiệp. Vì thế chúng ta rất vui mừng đón mừng ngài Tony Alexander, founder của Assessment 247. Việc này chúng tôi làm mang tính động viên, chia sẻ cho anh chị rất nhiều, bởi vì founder năm ngoái cũng tại khán phòng này, tiến sĩ Ivan Meister là sáng lập của BNI đã hiện diện ở đây. Những vị sáng lập ở Mỹ rất thành công đây, nhưng có thể chúng ta không gặp lần thứ hai ở Việt Nam. Tuy nhiên, cách mà chúng tôi đang làm là chúng tôi mong muốn rằng chúng ta có nhiều người hiểu hơn, chúng ta được gặp, chúng ta được truyền cảm hứng. Nhưng tài liệu và những người trainer trong tương lai đây chúng ta có ở người Việt Nam thì chúng ta giúp cho người Việt Nam lên rất nhiều. Nên sau ngày hôm nay, sau ngày mai ở thành phố Hồ Chí Minh, và chúng tôi có 2 ngày cuối tuần thứ Bảy, Chủ nhật là dành cho những người trainer được certified, những người nhà huấn luyện coach được certified để tiếp tục cái sự hiện diện của tiến sĩ Tony, là chúng ta là những người đồng hành để giúp người doanh nghiệp Việt Nam chúng ta. Các anh chị thấy thú vị không ạ? Cho chàng pháo tay của mình nữa cho tiến sĩ Tony Alexander. Và hồi nãy tôi có chia sẻ về cái chuyện chúng ta giúp cho cộng đồng doanh nhân Đông Á, nhưng chúng ta phải, hôm nay chúng tôi cũng có một cái chuyện giới thiệu một anh Hải là người đại diện cho doanh nghiệp ở Việt Nam tại Nhật Bản. Một người cho anh Hải một tràng pháo tay thật lớn. Chủ tịch của Hiệp hội Doanh nghiệp Việt Nam tại Nhật Bản. Chúng ta không cần phải Đông Á, chúng ta kết nối, thành ra tôi rất trân trọng có sự hiện diện của anh ở đây. Quý vị thân mến, nên chiều hôm nay và sự hiện diện của quý vị, tầm nhìn của chúng tôi chắc chắn là chúng ta sẽ đồng hành với nhau trong thời gian rất dài thông qua cái chương trình DISC này, và mong rằng cái sự thấu hiểu đó không ngừng lại giữa chúng ta và giữa những người anh em làm việc trong tổ chức của mình, cũng như trong quá trình chúng ta đi làm. Như hồi nãy anh nhà huấn luyện Tuấn Anh có đề cập là trong 10 giây chúng ta đọc vị được người khác như thế nào. Và chúng ta tưởng tượng rằng chúng ta 60 giây chúng ta bước vô căn phòng này, ai là người trở nên những người bán hàng cho mình giỏi nhất, chúng ta phải đọc được người đó để người đó giúp cho người đó hiểu được mình và mình hiểu từ đó giúp cho mình trở thành cái người thành công hơn trong kinh doanh. Tôi cảm ơn sự hiện diện của quý vị khách quý cũng như toàn thể các anh chị tham gia buổi huấn luyện chiều ngày hôm nay một cách đặc biệt đã đến cùng chúng tôi để chúng ta khám phá nhiều hơn nữa về công cụ DSC và nhiều cái assessment sau này. Chúc quý vị chiều nay mang lại được rất nhiều giá trị cho bản thân mình, cho gia đình mình và cho cái doanh nghiệp của mình. Cảm ơn quý vị.
Thưa quý vị, ngay tại đây, tại giờ phút này, chúng tôi kính mời quý vị cùng chứng kiến nghi thức trao chứng nhận DISC Online của Assessment 24/7, công nhận BCA Business Coaching Asia được độc quyền sở hữu công cụ DISC Online tại Đông Nam Á. Và sau đây, chúng tôi xin được trân trọng kính mời tiến sĩ Tony Alexandra sẽ bước lên sân khấu để trao giấy chứng nhận này. Vâng, chúng ta sẽ làm một tay thật lớn cho tiến sĩ Tony Alexandra. Vâng, thưa quý vị, bắt đầu kể từ giờ phút này, BCA chính thức là sẽ đơn vị độc quyền và khai thác DISC Online tại toàn bộ khu vực Đông Nam Á. Vâng, hãy dành một tràng vỗ tay thật lớn để cho ông Michael Hồng Quang Minh và tiến sĩ Tony Alexandra.
Vâng, sự hiện diện của quý vị cảm ơn rất nhiều. Tôi đi đã đến đây chào tôi, nhưng người đồng hành với tôi để làm việc này tốt hơn rất nhiều và cùng với quý vị trong tương lai cho tôi một cách đặc biệt mời họ lên sân khấu này. Mời nhà huấn luyện Lê Quỳnh Thư, mời nhà huấn luyện Bùi Nguyệt Anh, hai vị là phó tổng giám đốc của BCA của Đông Nam Á. Chúng ta cho một tràng pháo tay thật lớn. Xin mời sự hiện diện của hai vị.
Xin được mời quý vị đến phần chính thức của chúng ta trong chương trình chiều nay. Hãy dành một tràng vỗ tay thật lớn ạ, thật lớn và thật lớn hơn nữa. Bao nhiêu quý vị đã mới bắt đầu chương trình DSC ạ? Và hãy lớn hơn nữa để chào mừng tiến sĩ Tony Alexandra đến chương trình đỉnh cao thấu hiểu khách hàng.
Thank you very much. How many of you, in your interactions with others, I should wait while everybody puts their headphones on. How many of you understand English pretty well? Can I see your hands? Understand English pretty well? Okay. Go? Okay. How many of you in your interactions with other people have ever had a personality conflict? Can I see your hands for personality conflict? Okay. I contend that you can have a lot more rapport with people and a lot less tension with people based on how well you practice the golden rule. If you practice the golden rule appropriately, you will have a lot more positive interactions with people. And if you practice the golden rule inappropriately, you're going to create some problems with other people. Now, how many of you are familiar with the golden rule? Anybody, the golden rule? All right? I know you're familiar with it. The golden rule is, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Does that make sense? That's the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I believe in that rule 110% when it comes to values, ethics, honesty, consideration. There's no better rule. Now, I have to tell you that when I go to different places and I ask the group, particularly in the United States, when I ask them, what is the golden rule? I hear different things. You know, when I have a lot of managers in the audience and I say, what is the golden rule? The managers yell out, the person who has the gold makes the rules. Well, that's not the golden rule. I was born and raised in New York City. And we have our version of the golden rule. Do unto others before they do unto you. That's New York City. But I believe that if you practice the golden rule, treating people the way you want to be treated, when it comes to one-to-one communication, the golden rule can actually backfire. It can create a problem for you. Because it says that I should treat you the way I want to be treated, rather than treating you the way you want to be treated. Does that make sense? What we need to do, I call that the platinum rule. The platinum rule, very simply stated, is do unto others as they would have you do unto them. Do unto others as they would have you do unto them. I learned that rule many years ago. As I mentioned, I grew up in New York City. How many of you have a sense of what people from New York City are like? Anybody? They tend to be fast-paced, a little bit more assertive. Some people even say aggressive. So I grew up in New York City, and then eventually I moved to California, to Southern California. Do you have a feeling, a sense of what Southern California people are like? They're slower paced, they're more relationship oriented, as opposed to New York, faster paced, more task oriented, more bottom line. But when I moved to San Diego, I practiced the golden rule. In other words, I treated people in San Diego as if they were from New York. You see a problem here? I came on too strong, too fast, too aggressive. Even when I asked people to do things under any other circumstance they would have willingly done, they decided not to do it. And it wasn't because of what I was asking them to do. It was simply because of how? My approach. I came on too strong, too fast, too aggressive, too in your face. And that's when I realized that what worked for me in New York City did not work for me in San Diego. Now, there's an old saying, when in Rome, do as the Romans. And that is the platinum rule. Treating people the way they want and need to be treated. What I want to do at the time we have this afternoon is share with you a concept that many of you probably are already familiar with. But how many of you, the second or third time through a book or a movie, heard or saw things the second or third time through that you totally missed the first or second time through? Has that happened to anybody? All right? So, regardless of how many times you have heard this concept, I guarantee by the time I'm finished this afternoon, you will hear, you will see some new ideas, some new strategies, some new techniques to connect with other people quicker, deeper, and longer lasting. Am I just speaking too fast? No? Okay? Now, people won't tell you how to treat them, but they'll show you. All you need to do is open your eyes and ears. Watch what people do and listen to what they say. I believe Michael told you that you can pick out somebody's style in 60 seconds or less, right? Yeah, that may be optimistic, but it can be done if you master how to identify somebody's style. Now, when two people communicate, right now, when I'm talking right now, I'm actually communicating on 3 channels of communication at the same time. The 3 channels are verbal, vocal, and visual. Now, what's the difference between the 3? Verbal are the words that somebody speaks. So if we videotape this presentation and had somebody transcribe it and gave you a typed transcript of all the words that I speak, all you would have is the verbal part of it. That's it, the verbal. Now, if we took that recording and we gave you an MP3 or a CD of the speech, now you would have the verbal and the vocal. And you would probably get a lot more meaning of the talk than just reading it. See, when you read something, all you get is the content. But when you add the vocal and you listen to it, you also can get the content and the intent. And of course, visual is the body language, the facial expressions, the hand and body movement. So you're talking to somebody. I should say that I'm Italian, right? And you know Italians and their body language. So for instance, if you're talking to somebody and they go like this, what does that mean? They may have forgotten something, whatever. Or you're talking to somebody and you ask them to do something and they go like this. Right, so body language is very important. How many of you are in a relationship with somebody else, a significant other, whether it's married or living together or whatever? How many of you? Can I see your hands? Okay. So, well, how many of you are married? Can I see your hands? This is a very young audience. How many of you are married? Okay, good. So, you know, in a marriage, you do not only listen to the words. It's the way they're spoken. All right? Verbal, vocal, visual. So, and what I would like you to do is based on the signals that people send you, verbally, vocally, visually, the words, the intonation, the body language. I want you to make 2 simple decisions about the people that you deal with. All right, so decision number 1. This is an either or. Is the person that I'm dealing with exhibiting more open or guarded behavior? It's either or, one or the other. More open or guarded. So how do you tell the difference? Let's start with guarded people. Guarded people. Guarded people do not show or share their feelings or thoughts. We have a saying in the United States, they play their cards close to the vest. They're hard to read. They have limited or controlled body language and facial expressions. I have a son. This is visual, by the way, so you might want to look up on this one. I have a son who is very guarded. And when we tell him something that he's happy about, he goes like this. Now watch this. If he's really excited about something, so not a lot of body language and facial expression. It's hard to read. These are the type of people that when they get together with you, they're more formal and proper. They make decisions primarily based on facts, logic, data. At the other end, we have open people. Open people readily and willingly show and share their feelings and thoughts, whether you want to know them or not. Any subject, anywhere, anytime, it's okay. I don't know if you've heard the saying, you know, somebody who shoots from the hip, well, they shoot from the lip. They whatever they're thinking, that's what they say. No filter. Not unusual to leave a conversation with an open person and say to yourself, wow, what did we talk about? Because they're moving, jumping all over the place. Open people, when they greet you, it's a bit warmer greeting, maybe a two-handed handshake, maybe a hand on your arm or shoulder. They make decisions primarily based on feelings. The guarded people make decisions primarily based on facts. The open people make decisions primarily based on feelings. What will help you a lot in truly mastering this concept is as I talk about these various aspects, let's say guarded and open, think of people that you know who fit these descriptions. So for instance, who do you know who comes across more guarded? Who do you know who comes across more open? Right? Both of those. Very important that you know the difference. I have a good friend who is extremely guarded. On the scale, notice I have a number here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? On the scale, he's closer to 0. Very guarded. I remember the first time he called my home and my wife answered. All he said to her, this is the first contact they ever had. She answered the phone and he simply said to her, Tony. So she gave me the phone. When I got off the phone, she said, who was that? And I said, it was Dennis. Why? She said, Dennis is quite rude. You know, when I answered the phone, he didn't say anything to me. He just said, Tony. I said, well, that's Dennis. Excuse me. Dennis has a lot of other good qualities, but he's not social. She said, yeah, but Tony, Tony, why would you have a friend like that who has 0 relationship skills when you teach relationship skills? She said, what message does that send to people? She said, Tony, if I were you, I would coach him, sort of like an action coach. Just coach him in better relationship skills and show people how this concept, this DISC concept works. So I took it as a challenge, and I worked with Dennis for 90 days, coaching him on all the concepts of DISC and relationship skills and communication skills. 90 days. People who knew Dennis would say his change of behavior was miraculous. It was unbelievable. Because after 90 short days, Dennis would call my home. My wife would answer. He would say, Sue, Dennis, Tony. So he learned a little, but not a lot. So here's what I want to ask you. If you were to ask other people where you were on the scale, do you come across more guarded most of the time with most people, or do you come across more open most of the time with most people? First thing I want to do is ask, what number would you pick for you? Now don't tell anybody. Don't write it down. If you believe that you are most of the time guarded, you would pick the number 1 for yourself. Just put it in your head. Don't say anything. If you feel that most of the time you come across as more open, you would pick the number 4. If you feel I have a little bit of both, but more guarded than open, you would pick a 2. a little bit of both, but more open and guarded, you would pick a 3. So everybody pick a number, just in your mind. Now, here is where I typically get a question. And the question is, Tony, should I pick the number that I am at work or the number that I am at home? Now, how many of you believe that you have a different number at work versus at home? How many of you? Different number at work versus at home, right? Okay, we call that schizophrenic. Not really. Not really. Notice the title of this slide up here. Behavioral style. Behavioral style. Some people call this personality style. This is not, I repeat, this is not personality style. This is behavior. Personality, more deeply ingrained. Personality, hard, if not impossible, to change. Personality, a lot more genetic. But behavior? How easy is it for you to change your behavior? Michael, I can behave one way with you today and a very different way with you tomorrow. I could behave one way with you today and a different way with you today. I mean, I can change my behavior. You can change your behavior. So, can we have a different number at work versus at home? What's the answer? Yes, absolutely, you can. Now, has everybody chosen a number? How you think you come across other people? Now, by the way, I know we have people from Deloitte, right? More mathematical, more logical, okay? So for the people who are more logical or technically trained, I would like you to pick a whole number, not a 1.7 or a 2.5, a whole number only, 1, 2, 3, or 4, all right? How you think you come across to other people. Does everybody have a number? How many of you are here with another person who knows you? How many are here with another person who knows you? Can I see your hands? All right? What I want to do is give you about 30 seconds. So lean over to the person who knows you and ask that person, hey, what number would you pick for me? And see how close their perception of you is to your perception of you. 30 seconds, lean over to somebody who you think knows you and ask them, what number would you pick for me? Yeah, 30 seconds. And, am I going too fast? Okay. It's interesting, I'm seeing some people choose the number 5. No, we're stopping at 4 here. We're stopping at 4. You are definitely a 4. Definitely. Okay. I'm curious, how many of you, upon asking one of your friends or colleagues what number he or she would pick for you, they pick the exact same number for you that you pick for yourself? How many of you? The number you pick, they pick the same number. Let me see your hands. Right? How many of you were one number off? You picked the 2, they picked the 3. You picked the 3, they picked the 4. How many were one number off? All right? How about 2 numbers off? 2. From what you chose versus what they chose for you. 2. All right? Okay. If you really want to know how you come across to other people, you really should ask other people. Sometimes our intentions and our actions don't match, right? How we believe we're acting and how we actually appear to other people may not be the same. There are times in my marriage that I say or do something with a particular intention, but my wife does not interpret it that way. Sometimes leads to miscommunication, even arguments. So, everybody should have a number. You can choose the number you pick for yourself, or you can choose a number somebody picked for you. But have a number in your mind, because we're going to do something with this in a second. So the first decision we want to make, if we're going to do size up people in 60 seconds, Michael, the first decision, based on what I see and hear, is the person that I'm dealing with coming across more open or more guarded? Second decision, final decision. There's only 2 decisions. This is how simple this can be. Is the person coming across more direct or indirect? Direct or indirect? What's the difference? Directness is a measure of pace. So indirect people are slower paced. Direct people, faster paced. Now when I say slower and faster, I'm talking about the way they talk, the way they walk, the way they make decisions, the way they do things in general. Indirect people tend to be slower than the direct people who tend to be faster. One of my children is indirect. When I'm speaking to that child on the telephone, sometimes when I ask a question, I have to wait 10, 15 seconds before I get an answer. Now that doesn't sound like a long time, does it? But on the phone, 10 to 15 seconds, I'm banging on the phone. Hello? Are you still there? Hello? But I will tell you, I've learned over the years to just wait. I will get an answer. They're just slower. And of course, I have 2 children who are direct, and sometimes I don't even finish the question, they're answering it. It's crazy. Indirect people tend to be more patient. Direct people, impatient. Indirect people tend to ask more than they tell. Direct people just the opposite. Tell more than they ask. When it comes to rules, following the rules, indirect people follow the rules exactly. Whereas direct people follow the rules according to the spirit of their interpretation. In other words, direct people tend to bend the rules. Indirect people tend to follow the rules. When it comes to risks, decisions, or change, indirect people approach all 3, risks, decisions, change, more slowly, cautiously, methodically, because they have a tremendous inner need not to be wrong. And because of this need not to be wrong, they check, They double check. They think about it. They sleep on it. They do their homework, their research, their due diligence, because they don't want to be wrong. Now, direct people, when it comes to risks, decisions, and change, they approach all three more quickly, decisively, sometimes even spontaneously, because their inner drive, their inner need is to achieve things quicker, get it over with, and move on to the next thing. Now, when you have a direct person and an indirect person who either live together or work together, you have a problem. You have a problem. So, that's why it's so important to understand this concept of DISC, because if you knew what the other person's style was in advance, you're more tolerant, more understanding of their behavior. So, based on my descriptions of indirect versus direct, what letter would you pick for yourself? How do you think you come across to most people most of the time? Mostly indirect, you pick the letter A. Mostly direct, you pick the letter D. You feel like you have a little bit of both, but more indirect, you would pick a B. A little bit of both, more direct, you would pick a C. So everybody should have a number and a letter, is that correct? How many of you have a number and a letter? Let me see, a number and a letter for yourself. Everybody has to have a number and a letter. Let me see your hands. Number and a letter. All right, now, let me tell you what this means. Because we're going to see what people are like who are guarded and direct, people who are direct but open, people who are open but indirect, and people who are indirect and guarded. So, the first style, how many of you chose as your number a 1 or a 2 combined with the letter C or D? So you chose a 1 or a 2 and a C or a D. Can I see your hands? A 1 or a 2 combined with a C or a D. So I'm talking about a 1C or a 1D, a 2C or a 2D. Let me see your hands. Your style is what we call the D. That's the D style. What does D stand for? Dominance. They're more what we call directors or drivers. They're driven. So the D, a lot of people hear the term DISC, but don't know what the DISC stands for. So here we have dominance. Now I'll tell you about yourself in just a minute. How many of you chose as your number a 3 or a 4 plus the letter a C or a D? Can I see your hands? A 3 or a 4 combined with a C or a D. Your style is the high I. You're the influence, the interactive type. We also call them socializers or expressive, outgoing people. All right? Those are the people that say, party on. How many of you chose as your number a 3 or a 4 combined with an A or a B? Can I see your hands, please? A 3 or a 4 combined with an A or a B. Okay, your style is the S, what we call steady. Also, we call them relators, more amiable, easygoing people. And finally, how many of you chose as your number a 1 or a 2 combined with the letter A or B? Can I see your hands, please? A 1 or a 2 combined with an A or a B. 1 or a 2, A or B are up here. And that is the C style. The C style we call conscientious, cautious, more analytical, thinkers. 4 basic patterns of behavior. 4 basic patterns. Let me stop here and see if there are any questions so far. Any questions? No questions yet? Are you ready for a little exercise? Not physical. Actually, it is a little physical. What I want to do is people around. I'm going to move people around based on your DISC, right? Part of this, how many of you are members of BNI? Raise your hands. BNI. And of course, what does the N stand for in BNI? Networking, all right? I find that when people come to a session, a learning session like this, you typically are sitting near somebody you already know. Is that correct? So now I'm going to move you to sit with people who are the same style as you. So, let's go back. I'm going to go back here one more time. How many of you have the D style? Can I see your hands? D style. Raise your hands, please, because I need to see how many people we have. D. D. Okay. The D style. How many I? The I style. Can I see your hands, please? I. Okay, a lot of I's. How about S? How many S styles? Can I see S's? Okay, and how about C? Can I see the C style? All right, here's what we're going to do. Let's take, don't do this yet, but all the I style. I want you, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All the I style, when I tell you to get up and move, take everything with you. You'll take the first 7 tables in the middle, but not yet. All of the D styles, I want you to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, take 6 rows here, the D's. The S's, I want you to take the first 6 rows here. And then the C's, take the back 3 or 4 rows in the 2 end areas. I'll make sure that everybody gets to where they need to be. D-I-S-C. With that, pick up everything of yours, get up slowly, and then move to your location. If you're in the same location, remember, this is the D's over here. D's in the front. The I's over here in the front. The S's over here in the front. The C's in the back on the 2 sides. Or even in the middle. Doesn't matter. D-I-S-C. Let's move around. Where are my C's? C's. Back there. C's. And where are my I's? Okay. All right, I have an exercise for you. Okay, here's what we want to do. This is an exercise that you do as a group. Now here's how you would do it. Halfway down your table, like over here, I want the people on the left side over here on the even number, the odd number table. So 1, 3, 5, 7. Just turn your chairs around. You don't have to do it yet. And you're going to be in a group with the people behind you in the even number table. So you same over here. Right down the middle. You're going to turn your chairs around. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Turn your chairs around and work with the people who are in the even number chairs. Is that clear? Wait, not yet. Not yet. I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm going to ask you to answer as a group, answer some questions. Okay? Here are the questions. Number 1, whatever group you're in, I want the group to decide what is the single word that you would identify as your greatest business strength. 1 word. Number 2, if you had a weakness, what would that be? Okay, in D's, I will not accept none as an answer. Okay? Pick some weakness. Ideal vehicle. If you could have any automobile that would match your style, what would it be? What would be the ideal occupation for your style? If people want to get along better with your style, just one sentence, what should they do? And if they want to sell you, one sentence, what should they do? All right, so 6 questions. 6 questions. Here's the challenge. 6 minutes. Turn your chairs around. Go to it. All right, turn your chairs around and work as a group. Come up with the answers.
Bạn đấy có phải là phi không? Bạn đấy là ai mà? Hai bạn này quay lại nhau rồi nhá. 357 thì người ta không phân biệt là CIS này. Để xác định là quay đều lại thôi, quay ngang với nhau. Em không quay ạ. Bạn này quay lại còn em quay. Quay còn em quay mà. Em phải quay đúng chính.
My descriptions of each style fit what you came up with in your exercises. So let's start with the D's. Over here, the D's. I wonder how many of you, as your strength, picked a strength something like you get things done, you're an achiever, an accomplisher. How many of you had something like that as a strength? Right? So let me talk a little bit about the D's. The D's, their key desire is to get things done. They're great delegators, great accomplishers. Their motto basically is winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. They play to win. You know, seldom will you see a D style play a game for fun. Well, let's not keep score. Yeah, as the New Yorkers say, hey, forget about it. Did you get the intonation on that? Forget about it. Okay. The D's, great administrators, delegators, they work best under pressure. They play to win. Problem area with the D's is, of all 4 styles, the D's are the weakest listeners. Let me repeat that for them. The D's are the weakest listeners. Why? They don't have time, and they already know the answer. Why listen? Now, I wonder how many of you, when I asked you to pick a weakness, picked that you were impatient. Impatient. Yes. Okay. So let's talk a little bit more about the D's. What do D's do best? They're competitive. As I said, they get things done. They take control. They take charge. And they ensure bottom line results. If you want something done, give it to a D. What's hard for them? They don't like to do things over and over again. They don't like repetitiveness. That's when they delegate things. And they're not very diplomatic. Sometimes they can be seen as blunt. Right to the point. As customers, Ds always want to know what's the bottom line. They look for products or services that save them time or money. They may, in fact, ask you questions to see how much you know, whether you've done your homework before calling on them. They do not like you to waste their time. They will hold you to every promise that you make to them, whether it is written, verbal, or even implied. But once they see the bottom line benefits, they will make a very quick decision. The nice thing about Ds as customers, very quickly you'll know whether they like something or they don't like something. My eyes over here, eyes, their key desire, fun, excitement, applause, visibility, recognition. And as a result, the eyes talk a lot about their favorite subject, themselves. Generally speaking, the eyes are generally speaking. They have the gift of gab, the power of persuasion, the ability to get other people more excited about your ideas than even you are yourself. Problem area for the eyes. Tend to exaggerate, tend to round up. Oh, I've done it 100 times. I've done it 1,000 times. And they start a lot of things, but don't necessarily finish them all. Right? Here's another saying for the eyes. When all is said and done, more is often said than done. And they're proud of it. They're proud of it. Am I right? Yes. What do they do best? They're quick thinkers. They're charismatic. They're creative. They're great at brainstorming. Hey, what if we did this? And they're great promoters. If you want somebody to sell something for you, whether it's a product, a service, an idea, a cause, give it to the eyes. What's hard for them? Formal reports, especially if they're salespeople. They don't like reports. They say to their sales manager, do you want me to do a report? Or do you want me to sell something? I can't do both. Pick one or the other. And they don't like to redo something once it's already been done. If you remember back in school, how many of you, any style, how many of you remember back in school getting assigned a term paper? You know, a big report that you had to give several weeks from now, right? You remember that? It's interesting. When a paper is assigned by a teacher, and the teacher says you have 10 weeks, and I want a 10-page report. How do the different styles go about doing that? Well, the C's. The C's say I have 10 weeks, 10 pages. I'll do a page a week. How many words on a page? Well, let's say there's 210 words on a page. Let me divide that by 7 days. That's 30 words a day. I mean, they break it down to that. So, they want to make sure that every day they have at least 30 words. The D's, when the paper is assigned, what do? They go to the C's and say, I'll pay you $20 if you do it for me. The S's, when the term paper is assigned, they look for other people. Let's work as a team together and get it done. The I's, the day before, I've got a paper due tomorrow. And they work all day and all night. One draft, that's it. As customers, they make spontaneous decisions. In other words, they buy before they're sold. And when people buy before they're sold, do you know what it leads to? Buyer's remorse. I would say of all 4 styles, I don't have proof, but I would say of all 4 styles, the I's return more things that they buy than any of the other styles. Because they get excited about something today and tomorrow. Why did I buy that? They see the benefits before they're pointed out. As I said, buy before they're sold. They hate paperwork. And they need a document, something in writing to tell them who is to do what by when. Because oftentimes they'll get into an argument with an I, where you say, well, you said you'd get it done by today. And they say, no, I never said that. And they argue back and forth. Well, I'm going to record you the next time. Here, I'm going to record you. The S's over here, their key desire, harmony, close, personal, one-on-one relationships. The S's are the true people. Loyal, reliable, team players. I often say the S's are the glue that holds a team or a relationship together. Show me a marriage where one of the spouses is an S, and I will show you a long marriage. Not necessarily happy, but long. I will say a problem area with the S's is you have such a desire to please people that you say yes to too many things, even when you don't want to say yes. What do they do best? They're friendly. They're sensitive people. They are by far the best listeners. They're great at coordinating and cooperating. What's hard for them is competition. You know why the S's don't like competition? Because somebody has to lose. Nobody likes to be called a loser. Can't we have a contest where everybody wins? And they don't like change. They like the way things have always been. As customers, everything is based on trust and credibility. They make decisions with other people who are affected by the decision, know that in advance. They don't like aggressive salespeople or aggressive anybody. Once they buy, once they make a decision, they are very loyal. They like personal assurances, hand-holding, as we say. but sometimes need a little nudge to make a decision. My C's, where are my C's? Please raise your hand. C's. Okay. Their key desire, order, accuracy, precision, perfection. Their motto, everything in its place, and a place for everything. Their role model, Spock from Star Trek. Just the facts. They are the great planners, problem solvers. They're great at creating systems. They're highly inventive people. And of all four styles, the C's are arguably the most intellectual. Michelangelo, Da Vinci, Einstein, C's. So, if you want something done right, give it to a C. But if you want it done on time, think again. Because they procrastinate getting finished until it's perfect. Have you ever heard the saying, paralysis by analysis? So, what do they do best? Quick to think, slow to speak. In group settings, at the beginning of a meeting, they don't say a lot. They listen. Take everything in. And then when they feel comfortable with what's being said, then they start asking questions and making statements. Quick to think, slow to speak, but great at organizing and planning. Sometimes they even plan spontaneity. I'm going to a party tonight. What kind of joke can I tell? Plan spontaneity. What's hard for them, they don't like anything that's unpredictable or disorganized, and they don't like to work with other people who are not as organized and precise as they are. As customers, they need time to make decisions, sometimes focusing on unimportant details simply because it's a detail. They don't like risk. They want you to be an expert on whatever it is you're asking them to do or whatever it is you're asking them to buy. And they don't like a lot of enthusiasm. Now, of all four styles, what style has the most natural enthusiasm? What style? The eyes. The eyes. So sometimes the eyes come across too enthusiastic and too outgoing for the C's. Now here's an interesting thing. An interesting point is the I's and the C's. If you look at the grids that you have, the I's and the C's are opposite, right? And the D's and the S's are opposite. The strengths of an S compensates for the weaknesses of a D. The strengths of a D compensate for the weaknesses of an S. It's actually a great match. You ever hear the saying, opposites attract? So the D's and the S's work together only when they understand what their strengths and weaknesses are. The I's and the C's. The I's. Your strength is your outgoing nature, your creativeness, your enthusiasm, which is not necessarily the strength of the C's. The C's, your strength is checking things. Your strength is accuracy, which is not necessarily the greatest strength of an I. So they blend together very well. Here's a saying. You ever hear this saying? Birds of a feather flock together. Have you ever heard that saying? Birds of a feather flock together. That simply means that people who are alike are drawn to each other. It's the exact opposite of the saying, opposites attract. So both of them are true. Opposites attract. Birds of a feather flock together. How does that work if both are true? Here's how it works. In personal or social settings, personal or social, similar styles are attracted to each other. In work-oriented, task-oriented, job-oriented situations, opposites attract. In other words, D's and S's, I's and C's, simply because they compensate for each other's weaknesses. So, with S's and C's, both S's and C's procrastinate. S's and C's procrastinate. But here's the difference. This is very subtle. The S's procrastinate getting started. The C's procrastinate getting finished. Do you see the subtlety there? Very significant. The D's and the I's are both impatient. But there's a difference. The D's, they get impatient when people are not moving in the direction toward an agreed upon goal and not moving quickly enough. The I's are impatient when people are not moving quickly enough anywhere. It doesn't matter. Just move. Okay, so what I wanted to do is I'm going to come back to DISC, but because this was titled DISC for Sales Mastery, I want to give you some sales skills. I learned many years ago that there's a big difference between simply making a sale and making a customer for life. Big difference. And in my research on sales, my first book on selling came out in 1979. It was called Non-Manipulative Selling. Subtitle, Building Sales Through Trust. And in doing my research on that book, I realized that anybody in sales or marketing, or business really, entrepreneurs, they need to go through 4 basic stairs. First is they have to find qualified prospects. How many of you are in business and you are pretty much always looking for new prospects? Can I see your hands? New prospects. Can I see your hands? All right, so are you familiar with the 80-20 rule? The 80-20 rule? So 20% of your customers give you 80% of your revenue, or 20% of your customers give you 80% of your profit. I like that better. 20% of your customers cause 80% of all your problems. All right? So what we want to do is focus on finding prospects who match our top 20% of customers, who give us the most revenue or business. Once we have a qualified prospect, we call on them to make our initial, our first sale. And in our sale, what we want to do is always try to match our product or service, our solution to their needs. Now, if you do that, you'll make the sale. But how do you make the second or third sale and create what's called a repeat customer? The way you create a repeat customer is you have to exceed the customer's expectations. How many of you have heard that term before? You have to exceed the customer's expectations. Anybody exceed the customer's expectations? It's very important. Whatever somebody wanted when they bought the product, we have to make sure that they get it. Because if not, you're not going to create a repeat customer. Now, a lot of very good companies actually stop here. They have a good amount of repeat customers, they exceed their expectations. But I found that there's a fourth stair that is absolutely crucial, and that's where we create raving fans. I sometimes call them apostles or promoters, raving fans. These are the small number of customers that actually are out in the marketplace selling for you. And when I say selling for you, they're not really selling. What they're doing is they talk positively about you to other people, and maybe so positively that those other people then become customers. So we call them promoters, people who sell for you very indirectly in the marketplace. Now, if you can do this, if you can create a lot more of these raving fans, these promoters, you're going to substantially increase your business. Substantially. This is a key concept for business owners, for entrepreneurs, that you really want to move up these stairs with every one of your prospects and customers to create promoters. So how do you create more promoters? Right? Well, first of all, you need to ask your customers on a scale from 0 to 10 how likely they are to recommend you to another person. I'm sure all of you have been asked at least once to fill out a customer experience questionnaire. How well did you like our company? How well did you like our product? Am I right? Customer experience, customer satisfaction questionnaire. And some of them have so many questions. It's incredible. But there's one simple question that can really tell you how much the customer likes you. And it's this question. On a scale from 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend me to a colleague, a friend, whatever? And if they rate you a 9 or a 10, they are a promoter. If they rate you a 7 or 8, that means that they're passively satisfied. That means if you do all the right things, you're going to keep them. And if you mess up, if you make a mistake, if you fall short of their expectations, they're likely to start looking for another supplier, another company. And of course, if they rate you a 6 or less, you've got a big problem. We call them detractors. What is a detractor? That is somebody who actually may be talking negatively about you in the marketplace. Not good. Not good. By the way, there is a book called The Ultimate Question. This is the ultimate question up here on a scale from 0 to 10. How likely are you to recommend me to whoever? That's the question. This is a book That's the author, if you're interested in learning more about this. So how can you create more, I call them apostles, but really promoters. How can you create more promoters? Well, number one, look at all your customers and determine which ones are true promoters who really talk about you positively to other people. That's first step, write them down. Number two, once you're looking at that list of promoters, all right, this list here, write down, well, what do you do with them that you might not do with your other customers? Some of the answers that I get from people are that with promoters, you're more likely to do social things. They're more likely to become personal friends as opposed to just a business customer. But I will tell you this, everything that typically happens in number two, it's all built around the depth of your relationship with your promoters. And number three, how can you create more promoters? Well, what you do is you look at your customer base and you write down the names of twice as many customers who are not yet promoters, but who you would like to convert to a promoter. So for instance, if up here at number one, you put 3 names of current promoters, down here at number 3, you would write down 6 names of customers who you would like to convert to being a promoter. And then, over the next 12 months, with those people in number 3 here, we want to do the activities in number 2. If there are things that we do in number 2 here with our promoters, but we're not doing with our other customers, we're not doing it as well or as often, what we want to do is focus on our targeted customers, and I say targeted, and that we are targeting them to convert them from simply a customer to a promoter. We want to make sure over the next 12 months we do more of the activities that we wrote down in number 2 with the targeted customers in number 3. And I can tell you, after years of doing this with hundreds and hundreds of companies and tens of thousands of salespeople, that you will convert approximately 50%, you will convert about 50% of the people down here into promoters. So if you do this, this really works. If you want more promoters, people who are out there talking very positively about you in the marketplace, if you start year 1 with 3 promoters, and you have 6 names down in number 3 that you want to target, and you convert 50%, basically what you're doing is doubling every year. So year 2, you actually will have 6 names up here. And then you're going to write 12 names down here. And in a year, you'll have 12 promoters, and so on. I think of most of the concepts that I talk about in sales and marketing, this is the one that brings in an enormous amount of new business. Because the more promoters you have in your customer base, the more people you have out there talking positively about you and your product and your company. What we're going to do is, I think it's 3 o'clock now, so we're supposed to take a 15-minute break. When we come back, we'll talk about a competitive advantage statement. Let me tell you that this is a really good opening. If you've heard of an elevator speech, this is actually a good alternative to an elevator speech. So we'll talk about it when we come back. 15 minutes, ladies and gentlemen. 15 minutes. Thank you. in sales? Can I see your hands? How many of you sell? Okay, good. So, when you get a referral, or you have a prospect that you want to call on, oftentimes, a lot of people do not like to call on prospects because they don't know what to say. So the competitive advantage statement is a way that you can open up a conversation with a prospect or a referral more successfully. It has 4 parts: your name, your company, a typical problem experienced by the person you're calling on, and an intriguing statement about how you can help solve the problem. This is not where you give a presentation. Let me give you a couple of examples. I was working with, I was doing a public program, and we had this one person who did an exercise on this, and this is what she came up with. She called on doctors. So my name is Marlene, that's the name, and I work for a company called Prescription for Doctors. So there's her name and company. Now we go to a typical problem experienced by the people she's calling on. Physicians today are being pressured by insurers, employers, and patients to cut healthcare costs. Yet, their overhead costs are constantly rising. Now, this is a statement that almost every doctor would say, yes, this is happening to me, particularly in the United States. And now her intriguing statement. Now notice, she doesn't go into a presentation. We provide a service that allows the physician to spend more time with patients and cut overhead costs at the same time, resulting in better quality care at a lower cost. Now, when doctors hear this, their next statement is, how? What is the service? Tell me more, which is exactly what you want a prospect or a referral to say. Here's another one. Here's somebody who sells automobiles. My name is Mike, and I work for Competitive Motors. That's his name and company. We found that there's a lot of confusion in the marketplace today because there have been over 150 new automobile models introduced in just the last 3 years. So it's very confusing when you have so many automobiles to choose from. So here's his intriguing statement. We've developed a computer program that profiles everything the buyer wants in their car, and in less than 5 minutes, identifies the models most likely to fit their needs. Most people, when Mike says this to them, want to know, how does this program work? Can I do it? All right? So that's what a competitive advantage statement is. It's simply a way to get people early on, when you're calling on them the very first time, to say, tell me more. How does that work? What is it? That's all you do. Too many people, when they call on prospects or referrals for the very first time, it's all about me, 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 me. You know, I represent this company, these are my products, all about me. Maybe even getting into a presentation, which you don't want to do. You want to open up and get them intrigued. All right, so your name, your company, a typical problem experienced by the people you're calling on, and an intriguing statement about how you can help solve the problem. All right, so you have this all written down in your notes. Next, let's talk about customer needs. Customer needs. In selling, as in medicine, prescription before diagnosis is malpractice. Any salesperson who attempts to sell a solution to a customer before fully understanding the customer's needs from the customer's point of view is engaging in sales malpractice. What we want to do is find out what they really need, what they value. It means that we have to uncover any problems that they're experiencing or uncover any opportunities that they have not yet taken advantage of. There's two basic things we want to do in dealing with customers. What are the problems they're experiencing that I can help you solve? What are the opportunities that we can help you take advantage of that you have not already done? Very simple, okay? Now, in order to find out what somebody's needs are, we have to ask them questions. Right? You don't go in and start talking about your product or your service or your solution without understanding what their needs are, what their problems are, what they're experiencing. So I want to find out what they're doing right now and what they could or should be doing. That's the current and desired situation. Relevant past experiences would be, have you ever dealt with our company before? Have you ever dealt with our competitors before? Have you ever dealt with the product or service that I'm presenting to you? Who's the decision makers? Are you talking only to me or other people too, other competitors? That's the competitive exposure. Tell me how you will know whether my product or service is a success 3 months or 6 months down the road, and find out a little bit about their time and budget constraints. These are needs analysis. How could you possibly sell somebody on a solution to their problems if you don't first know what their problems are? So it requires some good questioning skills. Here's a few other questions. I always like to open up an interview with a client with, tell me a little bit about your company, tell me a little bit about your customers, tell me a little bit about your industry, tell me a little bit about how the changes and trends in your industry will affect current and future business. These are all questions that get a customer to open up and talk to you. Right? They're not what we call simple questions that get a yes or a no or one-word answer. They get people to open up. What opportunities from us or our competitors do you see as being missed or overlooked? So these are more needs analysis questions. Once you do your information gathering, before you get into the actual presentation of your product or service, there's got to be sort of a bridge. And that bridge is what we call summarizing and prioritizing needs. All right? It's a bridge between needs analysis and the presentation. Should be a part of every presentation. And this is where you say something like, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, we've talked about a lot of things that are important to you. Let me make sure that I understand clearly what those issues are and what their order of priority are, what's most important or least important to you. And that's what we do here. And the reason we do it is we get feedback from the customer to make sure that I heard all of their needs and I know which ones are most important and least important. I want to know this before I get into the actual presentation of my solution. Oftentimes, you are either selling to a company that's already doing business with a competitor of yours, or a customer is looking to switch and they're talking to you and some of your competitors. So what we want to do is make sure that we always understand how we stack up against the competition. So I just said we have competitor A, competitor B, competitor C, competitor D. Those of you who are in business, either in sales or marketing, or as a business owner, how many of you actually have competitors? Can I see your hands? Competitors. All right, just about all of us. Michael, I noticed you didn't raise your hand. You actually have competitors? I thought you had no competitors. This is the only answer here, what you do. So, if you have competitors, you put the name of the competitors here. So A would be one competitor, B would be another competitor. Let's put their names. And then what we want to do is here, what are our advantages compared to competitor A? What are our disadvantages compared to competitor A? Write them down. What are our advantages compared to competitor B, and so on. The reason we do this is this tells us if we know our advantages compared to a competitor, in a presentation, if we know we're selling against a competitor, or we know that the customer is shopping us and other competitors, we can talk about our advantages against any of our main competitors. Our disadvantages, why is it important to know our disadvantages? It's important because a disadvantage can come up in the form of an objection or a customer concern. And if we know in advance what our disadvantages are, we can actually have answers to those questions. So for instance, Michael, you and I were sipping a cup of coffee, and you were telling me about a company in Europe that had a DISC assessment, and you were asking me, well, what's the difference between yours and theirs? Because every so often somebody's going to say, well, I'm considering this other company too. You need to know how to position your DISC against theirs. So that's why we do this. And this is something that should be done at the very, very minimum once a year. How many of you manage salespeople? Can I see your hands? You manage salespeople. Anybody manage salespeople? Salespeople report to you? It's important to have your salespeople do this, minimum of once a year, so that they know what your advantages are and your disadvantages are. Now, once we go through the needs analysis, in other words, what are your problems, and our solution, before we ask for the order, we want to have some good feedback questions. I mean, this is just a whole series of different feedback questions that you can ask just to see how well the customer agrees with or accepts what you have presented to them. Because oftentimes people don't buy because they misunderstand something, or you left something out, or they interpreted something incorrectly. So it's important to ask questions like this. How do you see my product or my solution fitting your needs? How well does it address the needs that we talked about earlier? How closely does it fit your budget? Basic feedback questions that are absolutely crucial before we ask for an order. It's also important to cross-sell. How many of you have heard that term, cross-sell? Anybody cross-selling? And this is the big point. Cross-selling is making sure that if you have more than one product or service, that you are selling as many products and services as possible to the customer that fit their situation, that fit their needs. You don't just sell something to somebody that they don't need. The more services used, the more customer retention and the more revenue. Back a few years ago, I was working with some financial institutions, some banks. And here's what they found. That when a customer of the bank only used one product of the bank, like a checking account, a savings account, a credit card, only one product, that within 12 months, there was a 50% chance that the customer would switch their business to another bank. But when the customer had two products, let's say checking and savings, checking and credit card, whatever, when they had a checking and a loan, instead of a 50% chance of losing the customer in 12 months, it dropped to 10%. Think about that. By having two products, 3 products that they're using, the possibility of losing them dropped to 7% within 12 months, and so on. So the more products and services somebody buys from you, not only do you create more revenue for you and your company, but more customer retention, less likely to lose the customer. That's why, Michael, when we talk about DISC, that there are other assessments that companies can use. DISC, motivators, emotional intelligence. You have all these assessments, and the more a company uses, the more loyalty that you have with that company. Gaining referrals. How many people here are from BNI? Can I see your hands? BNI members. All right? BNI members, are you familiar with another company that Ivan Meisner created called Referral Network? How many of you are familiar with Referral Network? All right? So, do you know that, Michael? You know Referral Network? So Referral Network is, of course, you know, BNI, what you're doing is networking to get what? Business, referrals. So Referral Network or Referral Institute helps you gain referrals. Now, I tell people that when you want a referral, you do not, I'm going to repeat, you do not ask for referrals this way. Do you know of anybody who might be interested in my product? Do not ask for referrals that way. Because you know what the typical answer you'll get? Over and over you get this answer. Well, I can't think of anybody right now, but if I think of somebody, I'll let you know. You ever hear that? And what do? The next 2 weeks, they drop everything, searching for leads for you. Am I right? No. Because 2 weeks later you go to them and say, you know, have you thought of anybody that might need my product or service? You know what they're going to say to you? Well, I can't think of anybody right now, but if I do, I'll let you know. And you'll constantly be getting that answer. But what if you ask somebody this? Do you know of any company that uses online assessments to develop their people or hire salespeople? So notice the way you asked for that was very specific. So what we want to do is make sure that when we ask for referrals, the best time to ask for a referral is when the customer says that they are happy with you or your product. One of the worst times to ask for a referral is right after you sell somebody a product, because they haven't had the experience of using it and seeing how well it performs. The best time to ask somebody for a referral is after they are happy with you, your product, and your company. Also, make sure you ask for specific referrals. Just like I said, do you know of anybody who is using assessments in the company to do personal development or team building or hiring employees? Then once we get a name, somebody gives us the name of a referral, we want to ask some questions. Tell me a little bit about that person. Are they faster paced or slower paced? Tell me if you know where I'm going with this. Are they faster paced or slower paced? Do they tend to be more task oriented or relationship oriented? I'm asking 2 questions here that might tell me whether the person is a D, I, S, or C. I want to ask the person giving me the referral if, in fact, they will make an introduction for me. Will they call the referral and let the referral know that I will be contacting them? Or would they contact the referral and see if they can set up a three-way meeting for us, let's say for a cup of coffee or for lunch? But I want to ask for their help. I want to contact the referral as soon as possible, because I have to tell you, a lot of people, when they get a referral, they don't contact the referral right away. And then the person who gave you the referral, if they know you're not contacting the names that they're giving you, guess what they do? They stop giving your names. And always keep the person who gave you the referral, always let them know how well you're doing. Things like, Michael, I thank you for the lead for the XYZ company. I've called them, I made my first presentation, and they've called me back to do another presentation. So I want to let the person know that the referral that they gave me, that I'm working on it, and what the status of it is. I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but it certainly has happened to me, where somebody has given me a referral, and I talked to them maybe a week or 2 weeks later, and they said, hey, what happened with that referral that I gave you? And I said to them, well, the person just was not interested at all. And the person who gave me the referral said, I know this person really could use your product. Let me talk to them again and see if I can open up the lines of communication with them. So it really is important to keep the person who gave you the referral in the loop, so to speak. Okay. Exceeding expectations. This is a big thing. Well, I have to certainly say in the United States, a big thing that's talked about is that if you want repeat business, if you want repeat customers, if you want customer loyalty and customer retention, you have to exceed expectations. Okay? I just got a thought here. You know, within the world of online dating, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands for online dating, but how do you go from the first date to a second date? You've got to exceed expectations. If you don't, it's only a first date. So, what we need to do in exceeding expectations is to clearly identify, customer by customer, what their expectations are. How could you possibly exceed somebody's expectations if you don't know what they are? So we have to identify them. Secondly, we need to manage expectations. Now, what do I mean by manage expectations? Sometimes they ask for too much. They have unrealistic expectations. There's no way that you can meet those expectations. So you've got to, early on, manage those expectations. You know, there's no way that we can deliver a 24% return on investment, an advisor would say. The average over the years has been 8%, so 24% would be 3 times the average. I think more realistic would be 8 to 12% or whatever. We want to manage and then monitor how well we're doing. All too often, the only time we monitor is when the customer tells us they're happy or unhappy. We tend to be reactive rather than proactive. So we need to make sure that 3 steps, clearly identify the customer's expectations, manage them so that they're not too high, you know what, not too low. But here's why not too low. We know why they shouldn't be too high, because nobody could meet unrealistically high expectations. But what about too low? If the customer's expectations are too low, then anybody can meet them, even your low-priced, low-quality competitors. I think a good example of expectations that's happened so many times is when somebody tells you about a restaurant that they've been to, how incredibly good it was. Oh, this restaurant's the best restaurant I've ever been to. It just is so good. The food is great. The ambiance is great. I mean, really good. So you go into the restaurant and your expectations, because of what this person told you, are way up here. Okay? And typically what you expect of restaurants is over here. So here's what you typically expect. Here's where the person said this restaurant's going to be. Now here's the problem. You go in, you experience the restaurant. It actually came out over here. So above what you normally experience, but below what they told you you would experience. And as a result, because of what they told you, you go in, they didn't meet those high expectations, and you come out dissatisfied. When in fact, if you never were told anything, and you went into that restaurant, it would have exceeded your normal expectations, but because somebody said it was so great, you went in and it wasn't as great as they made it to be. So that's why it's important to manage unrealistically high or even unrealistically low. And here's what happens. When you exceed a customer's expectations, you create a moment of magic for that customer. When you fall short of a customer's expectations, you create what's called a moment of misery. A moment of misery. Now this isn't very difficult. What we want to do in business is to create as many moments of magic as possible and as few moments of misery as possible. I find it unfortunate that you can create 5 moments of magic for a customer and 1 moment of misery and lose the customer because of a single moment of misery. Because you've fallen short of their expectations. Right? Let's talk about managing the relationship. Everything is about the relationship in business. Everything. So, in managing the relationship, you need to understand that people do business with people they like and trust. What we want to do is make sure that the people that we're doing business with trust us and hopefully like us. So, there's 2 ways that you can manage a relationship. One way is increasing the quantity of communication. And when I say the quantity of communication, I simply mean the number of times that you communicate with the customer. The number of times that you communicate with the customer. Years ago, they did a survey asking customers and salespeople why they stopped doing business together. So they asked the salespeople, why did you lose this customer? And the salespeople, about 75% of the salespeople, said I lost the customer because my competitor either had a better product or a lower price. Then they went and asked the customer, why did you stop doing business with that salesperson or company? And about 2/3 of them said, it's because of the way I was treated. It had nothing to do with the product, nothing to do with the cost. It had to do with the way they were treated. And most of them said that after the salesperson sold me, I never heard from them again. There was almost no contact until they called me to try to sell me something else. So the quantity of communication that you have is absolutely crucial.
Tóm lại phải chăm sóc khách hàng.
But you also have to improve the quality of communication. The quality. You can't just keep calling people just to call them. There's got to be a reason. Let's talk a little bit about the quality of communication. You ever notice how a parent and a child communicate compared to the grandparent and grandchild? So we have a parent and child, we have a grandparent and grandchild. Of the two, who has the greater quantity of communication? The parent and child or the grandparent and grandchild? What would you think? Parent and child or grandparent and grandchild? The parent and child, exactly. But who has better quality of communication? The parent and child or the grandparent and grandchild? The grandparent and grandchild. Now why? Why does the grandparent and grandchild have a better quality of communication? Same nature? Well, some people say it's because the grandparent and grandchild share a common enemy. But I'll tell you what the grandparent does. Let's talk about the parent. The parent, when they communicate with their child, tries to bring the child up to the parent's level of communication, whereas the grandparent goes down to the grandchild's level. They speak the same language. We get back to the Platinum Rule. It's because the grandparent treats the grandchild the way the grandchild wants to be treated, whereas the parent treats the child the way the parent wants to be treated. Right? Golden Rule versus Platinum Rule. So let's go back to the concept of DISC. Let's talk now about how to use it. Believe it or not, we've covered 2 of 3 key things in DISC that are absolutely crucial. One thing we covered was, how do you determine somebody's style? How do you determine whether they are a D, an I, an S, or a C? Does anybody remember? Say it out loud. Yes. Well, how do they determine it? Tell me. How would you know whether a person's a D, I, S, or C? This is one of the first things we talked about. Excuse me? Yeah, we want to know, is the person coming across more open or guarded? And is the person coming across more direct or indirect? Because that will tell us whether the person's a D, I, S, or C. If the person is task-oriented and fast-paced, we're dealing with a D. If the person is relationship-oriented and fast-paced, we're dealing with an I. If the person is task-oriented and slower-paced, we're dealing with a C. If the person is relationship-oriented and slower-paced, we're dealing with an S. All right, so D-I-S-C. So the first thing I want to tell you in dealing with the D-I-S-C, so we talked about how to identify somebody's style. We talked about each of the 4 styles, what they're like, their strengths, their weaknesses. Now let's talk about how to treat them. So the first thing is, if I'm dealing with the 2 styles up top, these 2 styles up here, the C in the blue, the D in the red. When I'm dealing with a D or a C, I want to focus on the task initially. Get right down to business and only talk about or develop the relationship if they initiate it. If they do not initiate it, then my dealings with the D and the C are all business. Now, with the two styles at the bottom, the green and yellow, the S and the I, when I get together with them, I want to focus on the relationship first. And then talk about the business or the task at hand. So it's all about priority. The priority for C's and D's, the task. The priority for S's and I's, the relationship. Does that make sense? Great. Now, the second thing we want to do is, do I move slower or faster? So in slower and faster, again, with the blues and the greens, the C's and the S's, I want to slow down my pace. With the two styles to the right, the D's and the I's, I want to speed up my pace. Since 1974, when I was first exposed to this concept, I became in love with it. And I started studying it, researching, writing, and speaking on the subject. It is now 42 years that I've been working on this concept. But I'll tell you where I got my best education. I have 4 children. Can you see where I'm going with this? I have 4 children. I have one who's a D, one who is an I, one who is an S, and one who is a C. How is that possible? You ever notice when when parents have 2 or more children, how can they be different styles? Right? You know, we have 4 kids. We have all 4 styles. All 4 styles. First child, a C. I don't know how that happened, but first child, a C. Second child was an S. Third child, an I. Last child, a D. It actually, look, went around this way. So, why has this been so enlightening and instructive for me? Because this is like a laboratory for me. I can test out all these theories, what works, what doesn't work. For instance, when we went away on vacations, and I had to put 2 children together in a room, I found out very quickly, do not put a D and an I together in a room. They fight too much. They're both fast-paced, both opinionated, both talkative, and they argued all the time. Could not do it. And I tried different combinations. I did have a problem because one of the children, I had 1 boy and 3 girls. So, you know, mixing and matching them was a challenge. But I'll tell you what worked the best. And believe it, it's crazy that it worked this way, is, well, actually, it's not so crazy. The D and the C, I put in the same room, and they get along. The S and the I get along. Because the S is much more tolerant. So the S does not argue with the I. The S goes along more with what the I wants. Right? And of course, the D and the C, they're quiet. Right? Although the D is more assertive, they're both task-oriented. So look, I'll do my thing, you do yours, and we won't bother each other. That's how that works. With the I and the S, the I is always talking, the S is always listening. That's great. Great match. I learned when they came home from school with a report card, you had to treat them differently. When the I child came home with a report card, she'd be running in with a report card if it was good. Right? If it wasn't good, it got lost. The dog ate it. She'd be coming in if it was a good report card. With the report card in her hand, very excited. We had to make a big deal about it. We had to call up grandma, put him on the speakerphone. We had to put the report card on the refrigerator with a magnet so that everybody could see this report card. Right? Big, big, big deal. So the D child, same school. So I know the report cards came out. The D child comes home. No report card. So I have to ask, did you get a report card today? The D child says, oh yeah, I did. Well, can I see it? The D child says, oh yeah, they're here. And it's like almost all A's. This is good. This is really good. The D child, how good? And don't put it on the refrigerator. I don't want anybody to know what I got. Much more private and confidential. So it's quite interesting. The C child, that's the one that when I'm on the phone with the C child and I ask a question or make a comment, there's 10 or 15 seconds of silence until I get an answer from them. Early on, I would say, hello, you still there? Bang on the phone. But now I've learned. So I've learned to be more adaptable. I talk about adaptability here. Let me define that term. Adaptability is your ability to change your approach, to change your strategy, depending on the person or the situation you're dealing with. That is adaptability. You want to get along better with people? Be more adaptable. Some people ask me, what styles get along best? It depends. I can tell you this without a doubt, that no matter what your style is, you will get along better with other styles if you are more adaptable. It's as simple as that. You can specifically do to be more adaptable. So let's start with the D's here. The D's, where are my D's? Raise your hand. D's. So all of you are still in the same place. Great. By the way, one interesting thing about that exercise that we did, I know we have a lot of BNI members and Action Coach members here, and you typically come in and you sit near people you know. This exercise allows you to interact with people that you may not have ever met before. And it's a great way to network with other people that you've never seen. Right? I don't know how many of you in your little groups now that you did that exercise before when you went out on break, if you talked to those people, maybe that you never knew before. So it's a great exercise for getting people to meet each other, to meet new people, to sit next to new people instead of the people you always sit next to, and to network. One of the key elements of BNI is business networking. That's a way to do it. So let's talk about the D's. Now, when I talk to the D's, I want everybody else to know this. If you live with a D, if you work with a D, if you are married to a D, if you have a child who is a D, pay attention. And the same thing with an I, an S, and a C. So even though I'm talking to the D's right now, when you are a D, if you know a D, these are some important points that you can convey to them to make them a better D. I'm not asking D's to change. I'm just asking D's to be a better D. That's all. I cannot tell you how many times somebody says, oh, I'm an S, I'm a C, I'm a D, I'm an I wish I were a different style. Wrong! You are what you are because it has worked for you in your life. Embrace it. Be happy with it. Just be better at it. Okay? So, when you are the D, let's talk about some ways that you can be better. Allow people to do things without you always saying, oh, why don't you do it this way? Oh, here's a better way to do it. D's have a tendency to want to help people. Believe it or not, you want to help people. But you're always looking over somebody's shoulder saying, wait, no, do it this way, do it that way. This is a better way to do it. So allow other people to do things without always butting in. Be a member of a group without feeling that you have to be the leader of the group. Be a participant on a team without feeling that you need to be the leader of the team. And give credit, give compliments to people. One of the things that's so difficult for a D is to actually compliment people. Now here's the irony. Please listen very closely to this. I know you're not good listeners, so listen. You're listening? Okay. You think compliments. You think them. You don't always say them. What you need to do, and let me tell you, I'm a D. Alright, so we're in the same group here. For years, it was very difficult for me to verbally give compliments. And I had to, and then when I realized, you know what, I'm picking your compliment, let me just say it. And after a while, it starts becoming more natural. I will tell you, in my first marriage, I didn't give as many compliments. I learned in my second marriage, I better. Alright? So, I will tell you this, one of the few times that you'll hear a D say, well done, is when they order a steak. You need to verbalize the compliments, okay? So, this is when somebody is a D. Now, what about when you are selling or dealing with a D? What could you do? What should you do? All right? Now, I have the title of this, Selling to Ds. But several of, selling to I's, selling to S's, selling to C's, even though I say selling to, many of these suggestions are dealing with D's, communicating with D's, interacting with D's, I's, S's, C's, whatever. So even though I have selling, it doesn't mean that it is specifically selling, okay? So when you're interacting with a D, keep the relationship business-like, make sure you're prepared, you move quickly, you've done your homework, which is being prepared, find out what's important to them, okay? What's important to them, how much time they have. Of all four styles, the D's are the ones that have the least amount of time. So you've got to be quick, you've got to get to the point. One of the great frustrations for a D is when you go up to a D and say, hey, we got a problem. And you start building up to what the problem was, but you haven't told them yet what the problem was. They don't care. They just want to know, what's the problem? And then if I want to find out more, I'll ask you questions about it. Don't build up. They love options, but they don't like a lot of options. Give them 2 or 3 choices. My D child. I always had a problem with my D child because I would say, hey, we're going to this restaurant tonight. The D child would say, I don't like that restaurant. I don't want to go. I'll stay home. I would say, we're going as a family. You're coming. And we get into these fights. So I learned with the D child when they were young. I can't do it now because they're older. But with the D child, when the D child was young, my wife and I would pick 2 or 3 restaurants that were acceptable to us, that we would go out to. And then we'd go to the D child. And instead of telling them what restaurant we're going to, we would say, you know, we're thinking of going out to dinner tonight, and we were wondering, restaurant A, B, or C, what would you like? Now, all are acceptable to us, but the D child doesn't know that. But at least we're giving the D child the opportunity to make a decision. And then they would always willingly go. Why? They chose the restaurant. But it was a restaurant that was acceptable to us. We do not ask a D, hey, we're thinking of going out to dinner tonight. What restaurant do you want to go to? Because they may pick one that you don't want to go to. And then it becomes a fight. And whenever a D has a problem, we've got to respond to it quickly. Quickly. All right, so we talked about if you are the D and how to sell to Ds. Let's now go to the I's. There's my I's right here. All right? Got Anne's I's? Okay, great. Now, when you are the I, now remember, some of you live with an I or work with an I. Listen to this. This is suggestions that you can give them. I's need to write things down and work from a list. They trust too much to their memory. My daughter, who's an I, for years, I had to work with her to write things down because she'd always forget things. No, you never told me that. Yes, I did tell you. You need to write things down. Or she would always say, I forgot. I finally, after years, got her to write things down. She writes things down now. The problem, she writes them down on little pieces of paper all over the house and then loses them. But Dad, I'm writing it down. Yeah, but write it down in one place. You know, on our, I don't know how many of you have lists. We call it a to-do list. You have a list where you write things down. These are the things I want to do today. With I's in particular, they look at the list and they say, oh, number 6 is easy and fun. I'll do that. And they tend to do the things that are easy, fun, fast, but not necessarily the ones that are most important. So every day they move the most important thing to the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day, because they're getting all the fun things out of the way first. Get the less appealing things out of the way earlier in the day, and pay attention to your time management. Of all 4 styles, the I's allow time to get away from them. Tend to be late a lot of the time. But you know what? D's are late a lot too. You know why? Well, I's are late because they just lose track of time. Maybe they're having fun doing something else. The D's, when you're late, is because you always want to finish one more thing before you go to that appointment. It's all accomplishment, achievement-oriented that makes you late. Yeses. You're on time a lot, sometimes you're early, but when you're late, let's say for a social occasion, it's because you just take so much time. What am I going to wear? Will this match with this? Just, take time getting into things. Now, when you are selling to an I, the pace of the meeting, any meeting, whether you're selling to them or dealing with them, things are going to go faster. Allow it. Be a little bit more enthusiastic and animated when you talk to them. All right? So the I is excited about something, and the C goes like this. That's good. Yeah, same thing happened to me. As opposed to, wow, that's good. You know, same thing happened to me. Just a little bit more enthusiasm, excitement, animation. Slow to criticize, quick to praise. Eyes love attention. They love attention. They like to be the center. The party animal, as we call them. Do things differently. Do more things. Not always the same old thing, day in and day out. Try new things. Get out of your comfort zone. Get into projects more quickly. Slow to start. That's the S. Slow to start. We had an S administrator. This goes back several years. And these were the days when we would have to bring our own handouts for our workshops. And let's say it was a 30-page handout. Believe it or not, these were the days before even PowerPoint. So we have flip charts, we have our notes that we gave people. So our S admin assistant who put together the handouts for us, we would say to her, we need 30 handouts, 30 pages each. And it would take hours for that job to get done. When a D figures it should get done in minutes, really. Why hours? And here's why. What the S would do is they would say, okay, I need 30 copies, 30 pages each. And she would put the 30 pages, she'd print them all out, okay? And she'd have 30, 30, 30, 30, 30. So after 5, she would have a little bowl with a sponge with water, you know, so that she can wet her fingers so that it's easy to move the pages and count. She would make sure that she counted every single page, made sure that she checked that the pages went from 1 to 30, that there were not duplicate pages, because sometimes it could be 30 pages, but you have 2 page 5s and no page 4. So she would do all this, and then at the very end, she'd have the stapler to staple the pages together. I mean, everything was absolutely perfect and planned, but it took so long. Now, when I had my eyes doing it, I'd have one handout 27 pages, another one 34 pages. I'd have 3 staples in one, no staples in another. But the job was done quickly and with enthusiasm. Don't let your feelings get hurt as easily as they do. When it comes to feelings, please listen to me. Anybody in here who has to deal with an S, you need to understand that S's, their feelings get hurt very easily. Little things hurt their feelings. So, I'm saying try, to not let everything bother you as much as it does. Sometimes people say things, sometimes the D's do things that may seem insensitive to you and hurt your feelings, but understand it's coming from a D. And try not to let it bother you as much. I really believe that this concept, there's a lot of concepts out there. I was speaking to somebody during lunch, and they were talking to me about another concept, MBTI. How many are familiar with that? MBTI, Myers-Briggs type. So we were talking about it, And it's another concept, but it's 16 styles. It's so difficult to remember and use with other people. The beauty of this concept is it's simple, it's practical, and it really works. It really works. I wish I knew this when I was in school, when I was younger. I wish they taught this concept in school. That's one market, Michael, you should look at. Try to get into middle and high school and colleges because they teach, especially in the lower grades, reading, writing, arithmetic, math, but they don't teach people skills. They don't really teach relationship skills, do they? They certainly don't in the United States, I can tell you that. And in many countries, you have to pick it up on your own, or pick it up in your company. Pick it up from companies like BCA. But what we need to do, I wish I knew this when I was in school, and I'll tell you why. Because it would have helped me and many people, many students, to get along better with other students. So you can make friends more easily. But here's another thing. It would have helped me, and all of us really, to get along better with our teachers. Have any of you ever taught in school? Have any of you ever been a teacher? Anybody? In school? Right? So I was a teacher. I was a university professor for 8 years. And I can tell you, this even goes into high school and grade school, that if a teacher likes a student, if you like a student, one of your students, and they're right on the borderline between, let's say, a B and a C grade, but you really like them, could you justify a B? Yeah. And if you didn't like the student, if they annoyed you all year long, and they were on the borderline between a B and a C, could you justify a C? Oh yeah. Maybe even a D. Depends on how much they annoyed me. But I wish I knew this in school. But most importantly, when I was going through my MBA program, I wish I knew it then, because I met another student there. She lived in Connecticut. I lived in Brooklyn, New York. And Connecticut is part of New England. We call that whole area New England. And New England has a very different culture than New York. Even though they're close to each other, they have a different culture. New England versus New York. So we had this cultural difference. She was from Connecticut, I'm from New York. We also had an ethnic difference. Me, I'm 100% Italian. She was English and Dutch, which created an ethnic difference. I didn't realize how big a difference that was until after we were married. And we had all these issues in terms of how she saw things and how I saw things. This is before 1974 when I got into this concept. Because in 1974 I realized what our issues were. But by then, after 4 years of marriage, those differences became deeply ingrained, and it really made marriage very difficult. So I really wish that I knew this concept earlier in life. I don't know if this is a new concept for anybody, or if you've known it for years, but if we could have learned this earlier in life, could it have really helped us in life, in business, in school? Now, when you're selling or dealing with an S, everything revolves around trust and credibility. They don't like change, so you have to show the S's how any change you're asking them to make will benefit them and others. They like one-on-one relationships with you. Very important when you're dealing with an S. And now what about our C's? Our C's. When you're the C, try not to be so critical. Now, oftentimes a C is critical of others without saying that they're critical. Sometimes it's just the way you look at somebody that conveys criticism. Check only the critical things, not everything. And socialize a little bit more with people. Socialize more with people. Now, in dealing with a C and selling to a C, they don't like a lot of social talk. They want you to get right to the point. They like a lot of options, logical options. Remember earlier I said the D's like only 2 or 3 options? The C's like all the options, not just 2 or 3. Whatever the options are, they like time to think. Of all 4 styles, the C is most likely to say, let me sleep on it. I want to think about it. Okay? They like written guarantees, and they certainly want you to deliver on promises. So, some simple little tools and techniques and ideas that you can do if you are a DIS or C to be more adaptable, and most importantly, how you can communicate better with DIS and C, regardless of what style you are. We will be opening this up for Q&A when I get to the end. Maybe there's some of these parts that you want me to clarify a little bit better, or if there's something that I did not talk about related to disc or sales that you want to ask me to elaborate on. So think if there's any questions that you have that you would like me to answer as we go through a Q&A. Well, let's continue here. Let's talk a little bit about networking. How many of you actually do networking? Can I see your hands? You actually do networking. Networking is absolutely one of the best ways to create new relationships and new business. All right? So, we're going to talk a little bit about networking styles. How many of you are familiar with this name? Ivan Misner. How many of you know Ivan Misner? Right, Ivan is the founder of BNI. Ivan and I wrote a book called Room Full of Referrals. You have Amazon here, Amazon.com. Is Amazon here in Vietnam? Where you can buy books? It is, yeah. So, but I mean, if you can look online if you want to take a look at this book. Ivan and I are very, very good friends. He's been over to my house. I've spent time at his house. Our wives know each other. We're friendly. And I did talks for BNI, for Referral Institute, for Action Coach. But in particular, I did a program for Ivan and for BNI on networking using DISC. Okay? And in doing this, Ivan helped me with it. And we came up with some networking do's and don'ts with each of the 4 styles. Now, this is not in your notes. When we were having a conversation at breakfast this morning with Ann and with Michael, this came up and Michael said, you've got to put those slides in. And I said, but they're not in the handouts. And he said, you still have to put these slides in. And Ann said that, I guess after the program, you'll send these slides to people. Yeah, because she still has to translate it. It's all in English right now. All right, so let's talk a little bit about it. Okay, so here are some of the strengths of the D. I pulled them all up at one time, in case any of you want to take photos of it. That way you can have it quicker. But here are the strengths of these. All right, when these go to a networking or social event, they go with a specific goal to gain new business. That's the key thing. They want to get business or at least network with the most successful people that they can. Their conversations with people are very focused on business. They make things happen rather than waiting for things to happen. A D that I know who goes to networking events has an interesting strategy. I don't know how much you'll like this. I do like it. When he goes to networking events, he does not bring any business cards. Now think about that. No business cards. So when people ask him for a business card, here's what he tells them. He says, you know, I don't bring my business cards because if I give you a card, I now have to rely on you getting back in contact with me. What I do is I collect business cards, and on the back of every business card I write down a note to remember what I'm supposed to do, how I'm supposed to respond to this individual. Because I know every business card I get, this is a D talking, every business card that I get, when I go back within the next day or two, I am going to contact every one of those people, typically initially by email and then by phone. But I know that if I get your card, I will follow up with you. I don't know that if I give you my card, that you will follow up with me. So that's how they kind of take control and make things happen rather than waiting for things to happen. They introduce themselves, they can go up to people, they don't worry about rejection. They make a very quick decision when they meet somebody if that person is going to be a good prospect, lead, network source, and if not, they end the conversation hopefully nicely and move on to somebody else. Okay? So that's their strengths while networking. Let's talk about their weaknesses, their struggles while networking. They do have a little bit of a standoffish, dealing with people at arm's length. They get impatient. They want things to happen very quickly. Sometimes they try to close a new relationship or business too quickly. Right? So they ask for too much too soon. They easily can be seen as all business and not social. Okay? And they're too focused on business and goals and not enough on simply building the relationship. So this is some issues that the Ds need to deal with to be better at networking. All right? How many Ds are in BMI? Can I see your hands? Ds. All right? Hopefully these are good suggestions for you. I's, strengths. So they go to networking events because it's a social event and there might be a drink there that they can have. They like to meet new people. They like to be seen at new events. They just love people. I's love people. And people are drawn to I's because of the energy that an I has. You've heard of the term charisma? Have you heard that term, charisma? Charisma is like a social magnetism. I's have charisma, social magnetism, which simply means that you have the ability to draw people to you. All right? They're approachable, they smile a lot, they know a lot of people, they know everybody. They're very enthusiastic, they're very positive. They always see the glass as half full. In fact, oftentimes, over full. Okay? Their weaknesses. Sometimes they socialize too much, and it's all social and no business. So they've gotten to know people, but it doesn't lead any further business-wise. They have a tendency to talk too much about themselves. I have a friend, very high-eyed, who, whenever he goes to social events, he talks so much about what he's done, what he's accomplished, what he's achieved, what he's working on, that is actually, that social magnetism becomes a repellent. People can't wait to get away from him, because all he does is talk about him and not about others. This is an interesting one. They can be seen as distracted when they see other people that they know. So watch this. Watch what I do. Do I have everybody's attention? So let's say I'm speaking to Michael. Michael's a new contact at a networking event. And I'm talking to Michael. This is something that happens to eyes a lot. This is what they will do. Yeah. And they're instead of focusing just on Michael and blurring out everything else. You know, they're always sometimes listening with this ear to another conversation when they should be listening right here. You need to focus more. More concerned about having fun rather than getting business. Sometimes spread yourself too thin. So meeting too many people at a networking event rather than meeting just the right number for the right reasons. Does this make sense? If you want to be a better networker, work on your strengths and try to avoid your weaknesses. Now our S's over here. They attend networking functions, typically to connect with people you already know. Sometimes you're a bit too shy to introduce yourself to other people. Now, if other people introduce themselves to you, that's fine. But for you to go and introduce yourself to others, not as good. All right? But when people talk to you at social events, they really feel connected to an S because you listen so well. People love others who listen to them. You are reserved, don't necessarily like to be in the spotlight as opposed to the eyes. If the spotlight is on anybody else, the eye takes the spotlight, moves it to them. You want to deepen your current relationships rather than meeting so many new people. All right? And believe it or not, in networking, whereas the D's, when you go to networking, you typically are looking for people who can do something for you, whereas the S's, when you go to networking, you look for people that you can help. So it's more you helping others. And eventually it comes around. You know that old saying, what goes around comes around. Right? Reminds me of some of those sayings in life that really help you get through life. One of them for me, and one that I've taught my kids, what goes around comes around. The more people you help, the more people will help you. And it's not necessarily the same people that you help. It's karma. When you're going through a difficult time in life, as I'm sure all of us have had once or twice or many times, but all of us have gone through difficult times in life, my saying, this too shall pass. This too shall pass. Because every bad situation eventually ends. I'm a firm believer in the glass being half full. You ask an I if the glass is half full or half empty. I's always half full. Ask a C, is the glass half full or half empty? They're so precise, they say it's too close to call. Struggles or weaknesses. For S's, in networking, reluctant to ask for business. You very seldom talk about yourself or brag about your accomplishments. You're less likely to dress for success, whereas the I's typically are, really dressing well. You say yes to too many things. I mentioned that earlier. S's have a tendency to say yes to too many things, and oftentimes things that don't generate new business. And let's talk about, lastly, our C's. This is not moving. Could you give me the next slide? There we go, thank you. The C's, similar things within a degree to the D's. They attend networking specifically with a strategy to get new business. They're very focused on one-to-one conversations rather than meeting a lot of people. They ask a lot of questions, a lot of very positive things. But once they've accomplished whatever goal it was that they wanted to accomplish, they'll leave the networking event early. See, the S's and I's stay for the whole time. The C's and the D's, as soon as you've accomplished your goal, you're gone. Another interesting point, the S's and the I's. The more people you interact with, this is more so for the I's, the more people you interact with, the more energy you get because you're so people-oriented. The C's and the D's, the more people you interact with, it drains energy from you. That's why when you're hiring somebody, for instance, for a job that has a lot of people contact, I would focus more on S's and I's than C's and D's. If you need somebody to fire an employee, to let an employee go, who would you ask? A C? A D? Would you ask an S? No. It's interesting if you look at how the word fire somebody, that's a term they use, let somebody go, right? So, Michael, let's make believe that you're one of my employees, and it's the 90-day review. You've been with us for 90 days, and you really haven't performed, okay? And I'm an S, and I have to fire you. Here's how that might happen. Now, you don't have to say anything. So the S calls Michael in and says, Michael, how's the family? How are things going? How are you enjoying the job? How do you think things are going? Hoping that by asking those questions, Michael will break down, talk about how disappointed he is, and quit. If that doesn't happen, Michael says, well, why did you call me in? The S says, oh, no problem, no, everything's fine. They just don't fire. So what does the S then do? As soon as Michael leaves, they call the D and say to the D, would you handle this? All right, so how does the D fire somebody? Michael, come on in. Don't bother sitting down. And that's it. They, fire. The C's, They're very precise. Michael, please come in. Sit down. You'll notice there's a piece of paper in front of you. On the left-hand side of the page are all the job responsibilities that you were supposed to do. On the right-hand side of the page is our perception of how well you perform those. And you'll notice that your grade is an F. You flunked. We have to fire you. I mean, very, very clinical. How does an eye fire somebody? You'll like this one. How does an eye fire somebody? Well, I'll tell you this. Eyes do not like to fire people, just like S's don't like to fire people. You like to be liked. If you fired somebody, maybe they won't like you, so you don't want to fire anybody. So how do they do it? This way. Michael, come on in. I've got some good news for you. A new job opportunity. Not with us. They try to make it a very positive experience. So, anyway, let's go back to C's and their struggles of networking. I think our battery is going out. Can I have the next slide, please? Next. Next slide. That's not it. That's not it. That's the first slide. What's happening with this? That's it. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Our struggles when networking. For a C. Because they're not very social, they don't enjoy meeting a lot of strangers at the event. They only stay for a short time. They only talk about business. They tend to blend into the crowd rather than standing out of the crowd. And they sometimes come across a little socially awkward. How does each style attend a networking event? Well, here's the D. Here's how they enter a networking event. Just a guess, right? We'll start with the D's. Here's how they come into a networking event. And they look for somebody and go to the best contact. Very purposeful, right? How does an S enter a networking event? The S comes in like this. How about the I? Right? How about the C? So, let's see if we got it working. Yes. Okay. One last thing that I want to chat about, then we'll open it up for Q&A, is we've talked about DISC. DISC is one of many different assessments. DISC is the most widely used assessment in the world. Number one, DISC. Why? Because it's so accurate and it's so easy to understand and easy to use. But we have many assessments. Michael at BCA has many different assessments, so it's not just DISC. How do companies use assessments? Well, first and foremost, for training. They use it for training and personal development and coaching. All right? So you actually can use assessments to literally customize the training that you do by individual or by company. You use assessments to build better working teams. So people on a team or a committee or a group can work better together. So that 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 5. So that you have that synergy of people working well together. In sales and service, by knowing DISC, you can change your selling style to fit the customer's buying style. Very powerful. And a very big growing area is in employee selection. Do you realize that with what Michael has at BCA, particularly, let's say with just DISC, that he can create a job benchmark, they call it, and then as you are looking at various candidates for the job, possible employees, you can have them take the DISC assessment and match their DISC to the job DISC and see what the percentage match is. But there are a lot of different ways to use assessments in employee selection where you are matching an employee to a job, or you've done some research. You've looked at your top salespeople, you've looked at your bottom salespeople, and you want to hire new salespeople who are more like the top salespeople and less like the bottom salespeople. We call that benchmarking. That can be done. So these are 4 basic ways to use online assessments. I'm sure there are more, but these are 4 that we focus on. Just keep in mind that with online assessments, it goes beyond DISC. DISC is number 1, no question about it. But we have others that are very strong. One is called Motivators. Motivators measures 7 basic motivations that drive your behavior. Are you more economically motivated? Are you more theoretically motivated? Are you more altruistically motivated? So what motivates you? And why DISC and motivators work so well together is because motivators explain why you do what you do. DISC explains how you do what you do. So the two combine, DISC and motivators, the why and the how. Help you sell and lead other people more effectively and hire the right employees. So with that in mind, I think we have some time to handle Q&A. Are we going to have a couple of people go around with a microphone in case people have questions? You have a question? So you can say it in English? All right. I'll repeat this, by the way, unless somebody has a microphone. Can we get a microphone? We're going to get a microphone. Oh, okay, yeah, but... All right, I'll repeat the question. I will repeat the question. The question was, and tell me if I'm correct, if he has 2 children, and basically, how suitable is the DISC assessment to your children. How old are your children? 12 and 15. Here's what we typically tell people. We like to have them about 14 years old or older. So your 15-year-old, no problem. They can take the DISC assessment and get a report. The 12-year-old, or maybe you have a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old, whatever it is, if they're younger than that, what we suggest is you or your wife answer the questions for your 12-year-old as you see the 12-year-old behavior. All right, so you're taking it on their behalf. There's a lot of the words in there, they may not know the words or understand what they mean. All right, so rule of thumb, 14 years old or older, you can take the DISC online assessment. If a child is younger than that, or even older than 14 that doesn't understand a lot of the words, then the parent can take the assessment for the child as you see the child's behavior. So, and then when they become 14, 15, 16, they can take it themselves, and then you can look at how you saw them and how they see themselves. Really interesting. Another question. Any other questions? It could be about DISC, it could be about assessments, it could be about sales. We're having a microphone come to you.
I have a question. Do you have the one person have four DISC and they the same? They don't. Yes, they have 4 DISC in one person.
Yes, okay, so the question was, I'm going to say this, tell me if I'm right. So can somebody have a DISC all the same? Or the same level?
Same level? No, I think both. Sometimes they D, sometimes they are...
Okay, yes. All right, I got it. So I'm going to answer that 2 ways, okay? I want to go back to the first way, because somebody asked me this during the break. Can somebody have a DISC where all 4 of them are almost the same? And the answer is yes, but it is rare. Okay? Really doesn't happen very often. Now, your specific question, can somebody have a DISC and sometimes come across as a D, other times an I, sometimes an S? And the answer is yes. Because when you take the DISC assessment, it measures your level of D, I, S, and C. So you can have a very high D and S. You can have a very high I and S, or whatever. So let me answer the question this way. I am a high D and a high I. That's my style, D, I. So I have a friend who is very good at adaptability, right? He's very good at using this concept. So he will call me, and you know what caller ID is, right? Where you can see who's calling you on your phone. So, well, when somebody calls you on the telephone, if you have a cell phone, you can see who's calling you, right? So if I know it's him, and I'm in my D mode, all right, I'm a D today. I'm busy. I'm a D. He calls me. I know it's him. Here's how I answer the phone. Yeah, what do you want? That's very New York, by the way. Yeah, what do you want? He picks up that I'm in my D mode and says, Tony, one thing. Tells me what it is and says, that's it. Talk to you later. Now, some days, I'm in my I mode. He calls me. I see it's him. So I can be a little bit more social with him, so I answer the phone this way. Tony's Pizzeria. What kind of toppings do you want? He knows I'm in more of a social mode, and he can, play along a little with me before he tells me why he's calling, and it doesn't bother me, because he knows I'm in my I mode. There are times with my wife where I have to be in my S mode. and really listen, which is not natural for a D, but I've learned how to do it. If I am buying a big ticket item, an expensive item, I have to force myself to go into a C mode and do my research and homework and evaluate different products, not just on price, but on features and benefits. So the answer, yes, you can be at any given time a DISC, but depending on your scores, if your highest score is a D, more often than not, you're going to come across as a D. If your secondary score is a C, well, that's the second way that you might come across. But yes, you can come across all 4 ways at different times, but it really depends on the strength of each of those DISC. And in the online assessment, it measures those strengths for you. So any other questions? We have a question over here.
I have a little bit confused about the DISC. First, I'm very high C, but as I know, because I'm high C, so it's quite limit my vision as I'm the leader of the company. But in the lecture, you said that if you are the high C, you're better to be the high C. But actually, I want to change from the high C to high D. I try to not so concentrate on the details to see the bigger to see the bigger vision of the picture. So, what is the correction? I mean, try to be better C or change to be D in my position.
Okay, so my first question is, why are you sitting with the D's? You should be back there with the C's.
I changed to the D because
that's what you want to be.
If I don't concentrate on so many details, I can see bigger vision.
Yes, okay. So her question was, she's a C, she's sitting in the D territory there, but she's a C, and she's a leader of people, and feels that she really should be a D, more of a D, is that correct? And I can tell you that trying to change your style is very difficult. It's not easy. If there are a couple of behaviors that a D has that you would like to develop, you can do that. You're not going to change being a C. So be the best C that you can. Focus on the C's strengths, not the C's weaknesses. And all I can tell you is to be more of a D, be a little bit faster paced and not as detail oriented. Those are 2 key things. All right? But don't try to change permanently. I don't want to be a C anymore, I'm going to be a D. It's going to cause some psychiatrist issues. Okay? All right. Was there a question around here?
Thank you.
Tôi muốn hỏi là trong một công ty chúng tôi làm về dịch vụ thì đối với tổ sale và tổ chăm sóc khách hàng thì chúng tôi sẽ tuyển chọn những người thuộc nhóm IS hay là nhóm ID thì tốt ạ? Và câu hỏi thứ hai đó là nếu như tôi muốn có một trợ lý tài chính đắc lực cho tôi. Dạ, tôi xin nhắc lại câu hỏi ạ. Công ty của chúng tôi kinh doanh dịch vụ chăm sóc sức khỏe mọi người, tức là mỗi một nhân viên sale hay là chăm sóc khách hàng thì phải tiếp xúc với rất là nhiều các khách hàng. Do vậy tôi muốn hỏi ông là chúng tôi tuyển dụng cho đội sale hay đội chăm sóc khách hàng thì tôi thiên về chọn nhóm IS hay là nhóm ID thì tốt ạ? Và câu hỏi số 2 đó là bộ phận làm tài chính kế toán của chúng tôi ấy, thì tôi đang Chúng tôi chọn cái nhóm là nhóm SC hay là nhóm nào khác ạ? Xin cảm ơn.
Okay, so the first question was for service. I can tell you when it comes to customer service, I would hire somebody in this order. S, I, and then it really doesn't matter D or C. The D's, you're good at what you do, but you can become impatient. And if somebody does not accept your first solution, you may get upset. So again, S's and I's tend to be best at service, customer service. Accounting, easily. C. Secondarily, D. Stay away from I. You know, I's don't even balance their own checkbooks. So, okay. Any other questions? We have one back there, please. Back there.
Vâng, tôi có một câu hỏi. Bây giờ là muốn thay đổi chỉ số DISC thì bây giờ cách gì để có thể là mình luyện tập hàng ngày theo cái thói quen thế nào để với mỗi từng chỉ số như thế?
Why do you want to change your score? You know, it's similar to what the woman over here mentioned, that she wants to change her style. What?
Là tôi muốn thay đổi để, tức là mình muốn cải thiện cái, ví dụ đây là tôi muốn làm việc với đây, tôi muốn dùng cái cách của người đây thì cái cách gì mà tôi có thể luyện tập để tôi nói chuyện với người đây để tôi.
Okay, so to get along better with the other styles, you don't have to improve your scores. You just need to follow some of the ideas that I gave you. Learn how to speak D, S, and C. You don't have to become it. You don't have to try to improve your scores. Just learn that when you're dealing with a D, move quicker, get down to business. When you're dealing with an S, slow down, listen more. Ask more questions. With a C, slow down, get down to business quickly. I mean, those are simple things to do, but you don't change your score. You just learn how to deal more effectively with each of the other styles. Okay? Other questions? Other questions? How are we doing on time? Good. Yes, we have a question over here.
No, you're awesome. It's great to be here with you.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. If I X like E, I type. I am D type in example. But I type. Day by day.
Okay, 1 second. Let me, Anne, if you would repeat that for me.
May I change my time? Nếu mà em ở lại đêm và em muốn thay đổi cái tính cách của mình vì một cái đam mê nào đấy và em hành động giống như loại Y hàng ngày thì tôi có thể thay đổi tính cách của mình không?
Say that one more time. So it seems that a lot of people in here want to change their style. Don't change your style. Your style is based on years of what works for you. You are what you are. So don't try to be something else. Try to be the best style your style can be. You're an I style. If he is an I, if you are an I style, focus on improving the strengths of an I style, but learn how to communicate with each of the others. An example I gave earlier was that I am a D. Ds are not the best listeners. That is not one of their strengths. So when I deal with an S, how can I deal more effectively with an S? Not become an S, but learn how to talk to an S. So let me explain it this way. If you were going to Europe on business, and you were going to deal one day in Italy with business people, the next day in Germany with business people, the next day in, let's say, Poland with business people, you wouldn't become Italian when you deal with the Italians. You wouldn't become German when you deal with the Germans, would you? You still would be Vietnamese. But you would learn how to communicate with the Italians and how to communicate differently with the Germans and differently with the Polish, differently with the English, differently with the French, etc. You learn what works with them, but you don't become them. Okay? You know, when you learn a second language, whatever that language is, it doesn't make you that language. You just know how to speak it and understand it. That's it. You never lose your native language, typically. You just have taken on something else that has made you more effective in dealing with people. A new language. DISC is like learning another language. You're learning how to speak D, I, S, C. You don't become D-I-S-C. You are who you are. You just learn how to communicate effectively with each of them. And when you're done dealing with a D, you're back to an I. When you're done dealing with an S, you're back to an I. You don't become them. You just learn how to effectively communicate with them. Different jobs. You will see that D's are drawn to certain jobs, I's to other jobs, S's to some jobs, C's to some jobs. Now, these are generalizations because in any job or any occupation, you can have all four styles. But there tends to be more of one style in certain jobs. For instance, let's take nursing. Where do you think, what style has more, the S style, more helping? Let's say a newspaper reporter or a stockbroker. D, believe it or not, because there's deadlines, right? Sales, I. Public relations, I. Accounting, science, a C. So people do gravitate, or should gravitate, toward jobs that require their natural abilities. See, if you go to a job, let's say an I goes to a job where every day there's little people contact and a lot of attention to detail. It's not to say that you cannot do it, but you will not be happy, and it will create more stress for you. Just like a C, if your job requires you, for instance, to be a motivational speaker, it's not your natural ability. Can you do it? Some of you can. Would you be happy? It's not natural for you, and so on. You are your style because years and years of what has worked and what hasn't worked, and some genetic aspects of your behavior that's where you are today. Work on being the best D, I, S, or C you can, and don't worry about trying to become another style. What you should focus on is being the best you can be, focus on your strengths, minimize your weaknesses, plus learn how to communicate effectively with D, I, S, and C, regardless of your style. And with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you have learned something today. How many of you believe that after 3 hours or so, that you have learned 2, 3, 4 new ideas that you will practice once you get back to work? How many believe that? And that's my goal. My goal is for every hour that I spend with a group, for every hour, I want you to have at least one new idea that you will take back and use to be better, to be more effective, to be happier at what you do. So 3 hours, minimum of 3 ideas. Let me tell you, what we talked about today works. I have done thousands of these presentations, thousands all over the world. I get feedback all the time from people. I know what they tell me works. I know what they tell me that doesn't work. Whatever they tell me doesn't work, if I get enough people telling me it doesn't work, I don't talk about it anymore. I talk about what people tell me works for them. And this works. It will make your life better. It will make you happier. For some of you, it will make you more money. But it will only do those things if you practice some of the ideas that we talked about today. I very much appreciate, this is my second trip to Hanoi. I was here 3 years ago, socially, not for business. This is my first business trip to Vietnam. And I find all of you, I mean all the people that I meet, extremely friendly, young, and good-looking. They're a good-looking group, I'm telling you. I can't tell you how many ugly groups I speak to. This is a good-looking group. So I hope sometime in the future, Michael will have me back, and we'll dig deeper into these concepts. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Vâng, một tay thật lớn hơn nữa để cho tiến sĩ Tony Alexandra. Vâng, xin kính mời ngài Michael Hồ Cao Minh lên chia sẻ với mọi người. Xin cảm ơn tiến sĩ. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Xin thưa các anh chị rằng là 4 tiếng đồng hồ thì tiến sĩ trình bày nội dung như vậy thì các anh chị thích không ạ? Ai thấy mình rất thích giơ tay lên. Vâng, cảm ơn các anh chị rất nhiều. Chúng ta cho một tràng vỗ tay thật lớn hơn nữa cho Tony. Vì vấn đề mối quan hệ thâm tình giữa tiến sĩ với lại tiến sĩ Ivan Meisner cũng như founder của Action Code, nên chúng tôi mời, và ngài rất ít muốn nói như vậy bởi vì tuổi cũng 69 rồi. Nhưng tuy nhiên một cách đặc biệt tiến sĩ muốn đồng ý nói ở thành phố Hồ Chí Minh thôi. Nhưng tôi nói ráng book thêm 4 tiếng nữa để nói ở Hà Nội, vì thế cũng đã cố gắng lắm. Anh chị thấy đi tới tôi cũng không có thuận tiện mà ngài cũng không muốn nói nhiều, nhưng mà hôm nay đang nói chuyện một cách rất là xuất sắc. Một lần nữa cảm ơn. Thank you very much, Dr. Tony. I appreciate for your speaking today. So I would like you to be here with me and we take the big picture with the whole team. Is that okay, Tony? I know you are not a high eye, but I love to be high eye like this. We have a good photo together, okay? Các anh chị, Tony thì có hai đi, cũng có hai eye một tí xíu. Tôi muốn chụp hình một tí xíu cùng với các anh chị một tấm hình chung từ đây xuống dưới được không ạ? Được không? Ok, Tony, here, please. Yeah, we take photo together. Các anh chị